What's up, everybody? This is Logan Hanks with a Living Fully Loaded podcast. I've got an awesome episode for you today, and I'm joined by a man that has been in the writing, editing world at a lot of different places. He's done a lot. Got a ton of experience. I'm really honored to have him on the show, and that is Mr. Michael Shea. Michael, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks so much, man. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, dude. It's an honor. You have worked on some of my favorites. I know, and I actually kind of want to ask you a little bit the difference on this. I'm a huge Field and Stream fan. I've that's been one of my favorite magazines pretty much since I was a kid. And you also now are the senior editor at Free Range American. What is the difference? I'm gonna sound like a dummy here, but what is the difference between editor at large and senior editor?
Yeah, so that's good. That's an inside baseball question as far as writing and editing goes. So basically, a editor at large, most magazines, most publications, is not a staffer. So that's someone who's a contract writer or a freelancer. But
Gotcha.
the title editor at large is sort of the highest within that kind of type of way of working for the magazine, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So for example, like Field and Stream only had 3 or 4 editor at large in the 10 or 20 years that I've been kind of on the map with them. A staff editor or a senior editor is just one of the many titles that falls under a staff position at a magazine. So usually there's
Okay.
like executive editor, deputy editors, senior editors, assistant editors, junior editors. Whereas contributing editor or editor at large sort of signifies the freelance status, the contractor status.
Okay. So is that
Yeah,
now I'm thinking of it from the world of farming here. So would that be like a 1099 type job, I guess?
100%. Yep, yep,
Gotcha. Okay.
100%. I basically most of my adult life it was 1099. It was only fairly recently here in the last, I guess, almost 2 years now. I took a W-2 position with Black Rifle Coffee to help them spin up
Yeah.
Free Range American. Yeah,
That's pretty cool. I feel like there's a part of that that would be uh, liberating to be a 1099 guy because you pretty much, you are your own boss in that category, I would say.
yeah. It is. It is very different, and the transition from being a full-time freelancer, like I said, for whatever it was, 10 or 12 years, to now having a full-time job, very, very different. As a freelance writer or as a video guy, like the way I operated is I would get excited about something. So right now I'm doing a lot of reloading, doing a lot of precision
Yeah.
reloading for bolt guns, right? So as a freelancer, I could go down that rabbit hole and like nerd out about reloading for a month or two and then come up for air and pitch stories and just write about
Yeah.
nothing but reloading, say, let's use that example. As a staff writer or a staff editor, I'm still doing that. I'm still obviously doing the reloading stuff, but I also have other editors and writers that I manage and a website to keep up and clean. And so there are all of these other responsibilities. So the freelance kind of life is very nice. And sometimes I still pine for it a little bit, to be honest with you, because you can just focus
Yeah.
on like one thing and just go deep on it. Whereas I'm still doing that a little bit. Like, I haven't stopped reloading, for example, but there are all of these other roles and responsibilities that come with it. But it is fun. You definitely get the sense when you're a part of a team and a part of a high powered team as a staffer that you can really get things done and move the needle. So pros and cons, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I guess the one of the big, I guess, pro of being a staffer is you pretty much, I'm not trying to get into your specifics necessarily, but like, you then have that guaranteed paycheck. That's kind of like
Yeah.
when you're working a contract job as a freelancer, I'm imagining, if you don't sell some articles or you don't get something that somebody wants, then you just don't get paid.
Yeah, 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 100%. You kinda you have to kill to eat more or less.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but, I got to the point, and like a lot of the freelancers that I deal with now at FRA that I work with now, um, they're at the point or at a level where they can get the work, you know? And so there's almost like gates or sort of iterations as a writer that you kind of go through, and you want to get that first story published, and then you want to get that story published and make a little money on it, and then you want to make enough money to pay your bills on it, and then eventually
Yeah.
you get to the point where you have too much work, and it the income becomes more regular because you've put in the time and you're getting the assignments, and you have enough various publications or editors you're working with that you can kind of count on it, you know. And things
Yeah.
happen, like, economies tank and coronavirus, and like the world can go upside down, and you definitely don't have that stability as a freelancer. But it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily have to be living like paycheck to paycheck. You know, you can,
Gotcha.
if you put the time in and kind of develop your Rolodex and your skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of the fascinating things, like, especially whenever I look at your history of things that you've done, is the vast arena of topics that you've talked about. I mean, from the fitness world to the adventure to the outdoors. Um, that's always cool to me because I like people a lot that don't just fit into like a box of just one caliber.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said earlier, I mean, you might do an article on reloading. And then if we go and look down, hell, I mean, I actually, good buddy Brandon Lilly of mine,
Yeah.
I think he said y'all worked on something for men's fitness or muscle and fitness or something years ago.
Yeah. I think that was probably Men's Journal, if I'm
Yeah.
remembering correctly. I did a lot of stuff for them kind of back in the day as well. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's really cool to me to hear all the different areas that you've wrote in. And that's what would be fun to me if I would never call myself a writer. Um, I, I have a crazy imagination. I mean, that's something I've always had. Um, I don't know, my grammar and all those things are probably so bad an editor would hate me. But the part that you could kind of explore all these different arenas would be the cool thing, and which is one of the really neat things I feel like with Free Range American, because I feel like with that one you can probably explore some really wild topics with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Me personally, I've always kind of been a generalist, and that's been by choice because I've wanted to, write about the things I was interested in, right? So, like,
Yeah.
we live up here in rural New York, and we got a little hobby farm, and I got really into chickens for a while. Well, if all I wrote it for were gun magazines, and I love guns, I wrote a book on rimfire rifles, but if that was
Yeah.
all I did, I wouldn't have had an avenue to write about chickens and breeding, and not just write about the hobbies I'm interested to make a paycheck, but to pick up the phone and talk to the smartest people in the world on chickens, and have them pick up and talk to me and be excited to talk to me because they're going to get a little coverage out of it. So, like, I
Yeah.
definitely purposely went the generalist approach, because I know myself, and I kind of flip from interest to interest, not necessarily quickly, but there's just a lot of stuff I'm into, and if I'm excited about a fitness story I heard about, I want to be able to write about it. I don't want to kind of pigeonhole myself into just being a gun guy or being a hunting guy. And
That's
FRA too, to your point, like Free Range American, that's kind of been what's fun about it, is we're able to throw a bit of a wider net. And I talked to Brandon. You mentioned Brandon Lilly. I spoke to him about a story I wrote on Laura Zara, who was a survivalist, who I did that
yeah.
story last year, and they're friends, and he had like great insight into her. Um, Sorry, that was Bert. I talked to Bert Sorenex about that. I talked to Brandon about a Jim Jones story. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm just demonstrating your point, right? Like, I Brandon, it
Yeah.
was a story about Jim Jones where he spoke and did a seminar on it, and then I talked to Bert about Laura Zara, who he's friends with. So I was writing about fitness culture at one day, and then this feral female survivalist who's pretty awesome the next day. So
Well, I like that idea of the generalist, and now kind of hearing you talk about it, I feel like that's I've always kind of wondered where I would put myself in a category, and I
yeah,
am very much a generalist, man.
yeah,
Just like that. That's how I mean, and I feel. Do you feel a little more freedom with free range versus like field and stream? Is that one of the pros, I guess, going to FRA? And because if I looked at it from my side, like when I started this podcast, it actually used to be called American Huntsman. It was all about hunting. And I found out after about 15 or 20 episodes that I didn't want to just talk hunting. Like I love hunting, but I also want to talk about guns or movies or,
yeah.
writing. I mean, all these other things. And so that's what led me this way. So the generalist thing, like 100%, you're like pretty much speaking to my heart on that one.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's cool. The field and stream thing, I guess I didn't really see it as um like I was an editor at large at FS for a while there, and that's the one that's on the masthead that everybody kind of jumps out at everybody. And I
Yeah.
love those guys, and like in a lot of ways, they taught me how to write, and like I have much love for them. But at the same time that I was doing that, like especially towards the end of my time with them, I was mainly writing about rimfire rifles because I got just so nerded out on that, which eventually became the Gun Digest book. But I guess my point is like the same time that I was doing that, I was writing for New Pioneer magazine about firewood and chickens and modifying trucks. At the same time, I was doing some stuff for Men's Journal. I wrote a fishing story for them. I wrote a couple, chipped into a couple feature packages for them. So the move for me wasn't like from one magazine to a website. It was from this sort of network. I did a lot of stuff for USA Today as well. Um,
Yeah.
it was from this network of clients that I had to putting everything kind of in one basket, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it was different. But I through both of those iterations, I definitely stayed general, and
Yeah.
try to stay general to just keep it interesting.
So would you encourage people to try to take that generalist route? I feel like that's almost everybody wants to master this thing. Um, would you almost think it's better to go the generalist route?
Yeah, I think so. If you wanted to get into content, I think if you want to be a writer or a video guy or a photographer, um, the specializing on the subject that you're going to cover. So say like hunting versus tactical, right? That's not the place to focus. Like if you want to be a writer, I think the place to focus on is how writing works, how sentences work, how paragraphs work, grammar, AP style. If you're a photographer, the tools of your trade, how those camera works, Photoshop, Lightroom. And I think especially new people kind of get into this, and it's like they want to write because they like to hunt and they had a couple great hunting stories, and then they decide, oh well, I can talk so I can write, and I'll just put it all down on the page. And they've sort of skipped over a lot of that really kind of fundamental kind of craft uh, uh,
Yeah.
issues. Writing is like I compare it to like working on a truck. Like writing, it's so black and white and such a craft. So if something's off in the writing, it's just like being off in the engine
Yeah.
and in an engine. And so if and people come to writing from different places and they have all of these personal um, feelings and ideas, and they're very invested in the outcome. But if no matter what you think and feel about a water pump, if there isn't a water pump in an engine, the engine is not going to work, right?
Yep.
And so figuring out like how punctuation works, how to paragraph, economy of words, all of
Oh
this
man, you're scaring me
very
now.
mechanical. All that's the stuff to focus on, right? So it's not sort of like,
Yeah.
well, what am I going to cover? Don't worry about that. Like focus on the craft of the project. And I would say that applies to people who want to get good at photography and do that for a living, or people who want to get good at video for a living. Focus on the craft itself rather than the thing you want to talk about. And that, I think, is the fastest sort of path to success.
Yeah. Which that makes sense. I mean, man, it's same with like farming. I have people ask me how they can become a farmer, and they want to immediately, get 100 acres or whatever, and they want to start row crop farming or something because we do primarily corn and soybeans. And first thing, I'm usually like, well, first, where are you going to find 100 acres to row crop farm? Because if you live in an area that's row cropped, there is no farm is unfarmed. Like if there
Yeah.
is farm ground, a farmer already is working it. And then I'm also like, and also, how do you know how to farm? So I typically tell people to go work for a farmer to
Yes.
learn the craft. So like that makes sense to hear that. I mean, and it is interesting to hear it broke down like a motor. Because that'd be a cooler way. I wish my teachers back in high school would have compared it to like a motor. I'd have been much more drawn in by it because
Yeah.
English, ooh man, creative writing that was like right up my alley. But the punctuation and grammar, I was like my teacher's worst nightmare when it came to that stuff.
Yeah. Today too, there's so many neat solutions for solving that. So like we use Grammarly.com, which is a very robust sort of grammar and spelling check. And it's not perfect, but we have some writers we assign it to because the stuff will come in and we'll say your story needs to be Grammarly perfect before we'll look at it, because maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't get them 100%, but like that app can get them to 85% to a point where an editor will look at it and not lose their mind, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's so many solutions like that, there's transcription software for, getting good quotes, transcribing your notes. I mean, it's never been, there's never been more options to kind of get over that learning curve than there is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, I feel like we've kind of touched on that a little bit. I want to go back now, and I definitely want to come back to you. You're getting into the farming stuff too, because that's
Yeah.
obviously right up my alley. But um, let's talk about how did you hone that craft? Take us back to where you. I mean, you're in New York. Have you always been in New York? And like, what got you into the writing and all that?
Yeah, so I've been all over. And it's funny, like I get asked this, and really it comes down to like even when I was in high school, like the writing was the only thing that I did where I was like probably noticeably like better than my peers, right? So
Yeah.
it came fairly naturally. And then a teacher would submit something for some contests, and I won a couple of them. And like it just it was kind of like luck of the draw that I guess I found it early on. I was also really obsessed with movies, and
Yeah.
I wanted to write movies, so that was initially an early impetus to it. But I went to college and got a degree in philosophy that was like super useful, as you can imagine, and got out and didn't know what I was going to do, and I had worked for my student newspaper. I got interested in that and just started applying for newspaper jobs. So this was, back in the day when every little town had a little newspaper. And honestly, like that's where I really feel like I learned how to write, just having to
Yeah.
write on deadline, have to write a story an hour after the meeting and have it done in an hour. Um, so I was a newspaper reporter in South Carolina. Did pretty well and picked up some accolades, and then got transferred to paper in California. And so I spent about 5.5, 6 years as a daily newspaper reporter. And then the market fell out of news. Kind of Craigslist had already cannibalized ads, and like all the big papers were laying people off. So I ended up going back to graduate school in New York. I went to a writing program in the city, and it was I had started hunting as a newspaper paper reporter. I had not grown up as a hunter. I grew up with a lot of fishing, a lot of outdoor stuff, but I started shooting ducks in California and was just hooked. So I was in this fancy writing program, and all these people were writing like memoirs of childhood and like biographies on famous inventors, and I was like writing stories about duck hunting. So I was like
Yeah.
immediately the odd kid, and buddy came
Which
in
is
and said,
probably good in California.
"Yeah, yeah, this was in New York. This was New York City. So
Okay,
same thing.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, same
Yeah.
thing exactly." So a buddy came into this workshop and he said, "Outdoor Life is looking for an intern. You'd be perfect." And so I wrote him a letter and I said, "Hey, I'd be perfect." And they wrote me right back. They were like, "Yeah, come in." And that started this long kind of association with them. Um, so Field and Stream and Outdoor Life are owned by the same company, and they're in the same office. And the only real difference is the edit staff, but it's all shared services, or it was. Things have changed; they've been bought, and I haven't been a part of it for a minute now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I got hired on as a video editor because even though like writing was my jam, I was always still kind of interested in movies. And so as a newspaper reporter, I taught myself how to shoot and edit video with the help of a video team at a newspaper. They helped me. Um,
Yeah.
and so I knew how to edit in Final Cut and Premiere. And this was 10, 12 years ago when internet video was like the thing. So I got hired on as a staff video editor for Field and Stream and Outdoor Life. From there, that was actually kind of a shitty job. I'm not going to lie. It was I was in an office in Midtown Manhattan from like sunrise to sunset, editing
Oh,
other
sweet.
people's video. Yeah, it was like I want to do this outdoor career, and I was like sitting in a cubicle, and they didn't
Watching other
have.
people's outdoor adventures.
Yeah, yeah, and it was mostly like magazine people they had just given cameras to and been like, okay, now video stuff. So you can imagine the footage was just like it was bad. Um,
Yeah.
so I ended up I did that for a little while. I hung in there, I think like 2 years, 2.5 years, and then I left to freelance again. Started doing a lot of freelance for companies in the city, which was great because that kind of provided the income to sort of do all this other stuff, to do the outdoor stuff that I wanted to do. And then I slowly kind of worked back in and I started doing some freelance stuff for Field and Stream. And then after about, I don't know, 6, 7 years maybe, I kind of worked my way up freelancing to them for that editor at large gig. But while we were in the city, uh, we were saving money and like living cheap and being frugal, and basically got the down payment together to buy where we are now. So we're in the Finger Lakes in Western New York, in upstate New York,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's like we got 40 acres. There's a couple buildings on it, and like we got up here, I guess, almost 7 years ago now, and that was when I was like, I finally had this canvas to kind of do the stuff that I wanted to do. So we immediately got into chickens. We immediately started a huge garden. I shoot rifles in the yard, sight in the yard. I built a little 50-meter range for the rimfire stuff I got into. So, um, it's funny how life works out, but like that time in the city and freelancing, like that kind of made this next phase like all the more possible for me. And
Yeah.
then it was, I guess like 2 years ago, I heard Black Rifle Coffee was looking to build an outdoor website, and start an outdoor media company. And so I had some calls and had some interviews and whatnot. And that's ultimately what they brought me in for, was to launch this Free Range American project, and it's working out. Like the website's come like I'm always, every time I check the Google Analytics and see the number of people that are reading us, I'm like heartened and surprised. It's pretty awesome to start. The website's not even it's not even 2 years old yet, and like it's doing really well. We got a YouTube page we're going to launch next quarter. We got a bunch of videos we're
Awesome.
editing. So it's been really neat to like get life situated to where I have like the property and I can kind of have the lifestyle that I've sort of always wanted. And then now be a part of like this just rad company that's really putting resources into that lifestyle, that like outdoor, like free range way to be. And so then start on this website project and this media project and sort of see it kind of grow and develop under us. It's been pretty awesome, man. It's been a fun ride.
I can imagine, man. That's what I made several notes here because I like to kind of go back and dissect a few things. And um, the free range stuff is always cool. That's what I guess I may have first heard of it 2 years ago. I guess they had probably just started. I was at Winter Strong, the Sornex puts on, and a guy named Owen Lauerman was there. I consider him a friend now, and I
Yeah.
met Owen at Winter Strong. And actually, it was funny. I told him I felt really out of place because there's like all these, there's some NFL players and like Laura Zura was there and like all these really awesome people. And everybody's kind of like, so what do you do? What do you do? And it's like, well, I'm a farmer. So like I felt kind of weird being there, which I kind of got on the outdoor scene because I had an article published by North American Whitetail. So like that was like a
Awesome.
pretty big thing for me. It was just really the story of this buck that I had killed. And I mean, as a kid, I grew up, North American Whitetail was like the freaking, whitetail magazine. So that was wild for me. But I guess that's kind of what got my foot in the door there. But it was really funny. Owen came up and he was asking me, what do you do? And I'm expecting him to be like, oh gosh, this guy, he's just a farmer. And I tell him I'm a farmer, and he's like, oh, dude, I had like 3,000 chickens. And like he goes into his chicken farming, and I'm like, wow. And so we kind of hit it off on that. So it's always cool to me to hear the guys that have kind of, had them some chickens or getting into the farming and the homesteading stuff. And I think now is no better time to do that, especially. We're seeing the grocery stores and stuff like actually this morning I saw some video. I don't even know where it was, somewhere in the US, but the aisles were like empty. And
Yeah.
that how did you get started? Well, like what inspired you to get into the chickens and in the farming? Is that something you've always been interested in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really has been something I've just always been interested in. I've always thought birds were cool, and we ended up having 200 chickens at one point. And
Nice.
yeah, it's funny how it happened. I moved out here and I got a buddy. He's got a butcher shop. He's like my hillbilly friend out here. I knew him before I moved up here, and Kyle went to high school with the manager of the Tractor Supply. And so I was like,
Okay.
oh well, I gotta get chickens. What should I do? And he said, oh, go to Tractor Supply. Like talk to I haven't met her, seen her in years, but Lauren, go talk to Lauren at Tractor Supply. She'll straighten you out. So I went in there and she said, yeah, it's coming, the chick days. We've all seen it now, right? But like I was just from the
Yep.
city. Like everything was like new and awesome. And so I went over there. She brought out the form. She said, pick what you want. And they had all these different breeds. And I picked like two of each, right? And then gave her the order form, and that was the end of it. Month or so later, she called and she said, so there's a problem on your order form. And instead of getting two each, we ordered you 2 dozen of each.
Oh
And I was
crap.
like, really? I was like, that's a lot of chickens. And she goes, yep. She's like, your friends are so and so. Like, we're just going to honor the price and give them all to you, or I can find homes with them because they didn't have enough to put them out signs. They didn't have the skew, all that. And so I was like, yeah, I'll take them. Why not? So,
Yeah.
I come home from Tractor Supply. My wife's expecting 12 chickens, and I had to like like 60 or something like that, you
Yeah.
know? And she was like, "Really? This is what we're doing." We have a barn, we had plenty of space. Um, and I just raised them up. You know, we had a whole brooder of them, and man, I just loved them. I just love having them around. We're down to six now,
Yeah.
but just because life, it's the flock's thinned way out. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago now. So we had like our
Yeah.
first 60, and we free ranged them in our yard and everything. And I just loved having them around, man. Like chickens, like add just like life to a property. And when
Oh
you
yeah.
watch them and get close to them, like they're 100% dinosaurs. Like my son, my 5-year-old will say, "Dad, dinosaurs aren't extinct. They turned into chickens." And like that is exactly the way we looked at it. So we throw them
Yes.
frogs and throw them snakes and just watch them do their like velociraptor thing. So we got into it almost accidentally, I guess, on the chicken side, but there was always kind of that interest there. Um, and yeah, just when one thing led to another, we wanted to do a garden, and I'm kind of like a go big or go home person. So we had a
Yep.
little garden one year. Now, we got a rototiller for the John Deere and put in like, I don't know, the garden's maybe like 100 by 50 or 100 by 60, something like
Nice.
that. So we get a
Yeah.
ton of veggies that we can, and like even before, I feel like this has gotten way cool in the last couple of years, but like even before that sort of cycle had happened, we'll have a summer dinner where, I mean, obviously, like we don't have the salt, and we don't get the oil and whatnot, but all the veggies, all the main things, the meat is stuff that I hunted, the eggs are from the chickens, the veggies are all from the ground outside the kitchen. And we've just kind of lived like that for, I guess we've been here, for probably like the last 4 years, 5 years. It's just kind of turned into a lifestyle thing. For a while, I was
Yeah.
selling eggs at a co-op. When I got up to the 200,
Yeah.
we were bringing eggs to the co-op and selling them, and that worked out really well. But it just kind of got too much to manage, and the cost benefit analysis is just not there. It's hard to make egg laying chickens pay for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could imagine. That's what we have 12 or now we have 11. I have 11 chickens now. We started and kind of just added at first I was like, we'll get 6 or 8, and then I finally was like, we'll just get 12. And that's what I told my wife, cuz right now they have the new chicks in at the stores. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we could add to the herd or the flock, and she's like, "No. No, I'm good, cuz we already are getting like when it's warm, it's funny, man. We'll get 10 eggs a day or something, because one
Yeah.
of them is a rooster, and so we're getting a lot of eggs. And I mean, we don't eat eggs that much, so like we're giving them away to family and stuff. So I really don't need more, but it is something about chickens. They're pretty funny, and like I said, they do add a lot of life to the property.
Yeah.
Um, but the the garden stuff, man, that you talking about having a meal where you're eating vegetables you grew, meat you hunted, man, it is nothing like it. And there's it's crazy. People think I'm nuts. Like we grow lettuce and different stuff like that
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Um, Before it gets too hot, it'll start to shoot up or whatever after it gets really hot. And here it gets freaking hot. But um, before that, man, it's almost hard to eat salad from the store after
Oh,
having
100%.
fresh. Dude, it's a huge difference. Like that's what my wife and I tell people. We're like, it is a huge taste difference between fresh garden lettuce and what you buy in the grocery store.
Oh, 100%. Like, to the point where, um, like, we don't eat a lot of salads this time of year because we've kind of run
Yeah,
through it. It's winter, obviously. We'll do a lot of, like, not pastas, but almost like pasta sauces, stews with all the reduced tomatoes. We put in, like, 40, 50 tomato plants, so we have a huge tomato harvest, and then we'll kinda
yeah,
eat on that through the winter. Um, But man, like we'll get an itch for a salad and get a bag of salad this time of year because it's been a couple months, and 100%, like you notice it. Same thing with eggs. Like I can't even
yeah.
eat eggs in a restaurant anymore. because I'm just so spoiled. Um, and I think people don't realize how dramatic a shift it is when you get like high quality ingredients you've raised or reared yourself. Yeah,
No, I mean they don't, and that's kind of the same. Like our we have cattle as well, and so like last year I'd had a bull that me and my cousin he backgrounds them and stuff, and he fed out one of my bulls, and
yeah,
we had it processed, and he took a half and we took a half. So I mean we got a couple 100 pounds of meat off of this bull,
yeah,
and oh man, I mean the ground beef like. Cause I got deer meat. I love deer meat, but man, I love ground beef. Like I grew up
yeah,
with cattle,
yeah.
so I mean, ground beef, steaks, just beef is where that's my jam. And dude, that people would really be blown away. Even all that. I mean, it just goes hand in hand with what we're saying. Like the meat that you buy in the grocery store. I mean, it almost is like bland compared
Yeah.
to this other, and like it's crazy how it'll stay fresh so much longer. Like our lettuce and stuff we get, we the way we keep it in the fridge, it will outlast store bought lettuce. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
like I don't even know the time frame, but way outlast it. So
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
urge people to get
fresh.
in, man.
It's
Yeah,
fresh, and,
yeah,
like, you if it's by virtue of being in the grocery store, that food is old. Like, if it made it there
yeah,
to the grocery store, like, it's got age on it, you know? And,
yeah,
you can pick your aisle or pick your cart, your section, and maybe you can get something local depending on the quality of the grocery store, but, it traveled to get there. And, like, we'll do the same
yeah,
thing with beef and pork. Like, my buddy I was telling you about, the butcher, um, I want to say not every year, every other year or so, we'll get a hog from him and just put that in the freezer just to kind of offset all the venison and elk and all the other stuff.
yeah,
We'll get a hankering for beef. Usually it's brisket because I like to smoke, get stuff smoking out back, and I'll just go to him and get a brisket of his like locally raised calf, just sort of like what you just described, and we'll eat beef
yeah,
that way. So we're not like fundamentalists out here of like, it's got to be organic or we don't eat beef, we don't eat pork, we kind of eat it all, but we're very sort of selective on the quality of the ingredient and like where it came from. And it's not even like a political thing. It's mainly just like we can taste our food now and we've been to that side and we
yeah,
know what's better. So like, why
yeah,
would I buy a rack of ribs at Walmart when I can just pay a little more, get them from my buddy, and it's going to taste 100 times better? And I'm supporting a local farm, supporting a local business. So, like I said, it's just kind of become our lifestyle out here. Like we live it and love it.
Well, and you said something important there too. Like I had somebody that reached out to me one time and they wanted me to start selling some meat like beef direct because they said
Yeah,
it had gotten too expensive in the grocery stores. And that kind of, I mean, I just was like, I'm not going to get into that. Which Tennessee here we have some weird, like there has to be an inspector on site. Like it's kind of a hard process here.
yeah,
So I won't ever get into it. But also, I got to thinking about it later because I didn't really register a whole lot at first. But then later on, I was like, well, actually, if I did that, it wouldn't be cheaper. It would be
right,
more because you're
right,
getting, like you said, then you can actually taste it. Like that's like thinking about a salad for me. When I get store bought salad, I'm drowning that stuff in ranch dressing. I love ranch dressing, but like I'm pretty much eating a little salad with my ranch. And when we have the garden vegetables, I mean, I don't even put that much dressing on there because I actually
yeah.
like the taste of the salad.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like we'll buy like arugula. My wife loves arugula, and we buy the bagged arugula, and it's a little peppery and whatnot. And then we grew it ourselves. And I mean, it's so peppery, it's like a mustard. Like you can't even eat like a bowl of an arugula salad if it's comes out of our garden. You have to like mix in iceberg and other lettuces because it
Yeah.
has so much of that like pepper kind of snap. So there's a huge difference. But I could probably, well, maybe not on the garden. I was going to say it would cost as much. It would cost more to grow your own vegetables as well. But you're definitely, if your end goal is like inexpensive meat or like rate lowering the bills, unfortunately on this moment in history, that's just not
Yeah.
possible, and get the super high quality ingredients we're talking about. But I do think, like, overall, if you factor in all the deer that I hunt here on the property that don't take a lot to it, if you factor in, the size of our garden, I do think you can get those costs like closer to equal than if you just kind of ate everything out of the grocery store. But it's just so
Yeah.
much more rewarding. Like, I don't think I could ever go back, no matter the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah. It is, man. It's just something. And I think, like, as a man, it's kind of like it makes you feel like a man. It's like, man, we're eating the food. I've put this food here. Like, it
Yeah,
kind of gives you that feeling. Um, I want to jump back pretty early because you said something that stood out to me as well. And that is, you said you were a movie guy. Um, like
yeah,
what now I'm a movie guy, man. That's it's really been funny to me doing this podcast, the different people because that that have certain things they would like to get into. I wanted to be in the movies whenever I was younger. Like that was my goal. I mean, I'm here in West Tennessee, very opposite of California. But like when I was about 18 or 19, I was getting ready thinking I was about to pack my bags and head to California to try to,
yeah,
to try my hand at the movie world. So you piqued my interest whenever you talked about that. And it's something I've said on the show is there's no wasted time. I don't believe in any wasted time because, you talked about all these different routes you've gone through that really have gotten you to the place where you are today. And like, you know, if you had gone all the way back to when you were at like thinking about going to write movies and someone was like, "Man, one day you're going to have a homestead in New York, like rural New York, and you're going to be writing about hunting and all these other things." You probably would have thought they were a little crazy.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. As far as like the movies, like I've thought about this, and I had like a really seminal experience. I think it was Pulp Fiction came out. I think a sophomore in high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and my buddy worked at the movie theater. So I used to always just be able to walk in and go at the little local movie theater in Willimantic and just sit and watch movies. And we were like, "Yeah, what are you doing after school?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go see this John Travolta movie." And like, my mom loved John Travolta, and I was like, "John Travolta, like, what's wrong with you?" Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't want to see that. He's like, "No, no, no. I hear it's pretty good." I was like, "John, like the angel guy? Like, really?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, no, no. It's going to be different." And I was like, whatever, man." And so sat back in the back seat, and Pulp Fiction came on in the big screen, and it blew my mind. I mean, it
Yeah.
I had never seen anything like that before. And from the violence, as graphic as it was, to like the language, here was the crime culture of Los Angeles, but those people talked like our punk ass little kids in Eastern Connecticut, because we were very profane, how we grew up, how we spoke with each other as young kids. Um, so all of a sudden, it was weird because I was as far from a gangster as anyone could be, but I like related so deeply to that movie and like how it was made, and it opened up like all of these possibilities, because I thought about like reading, and it was like Shakespeare and the Canterbury Tales and all the stuff they kind of spoon feed you in high school.
Yeah.
And then I got the script of Pulp Fiction, and I was reading this, and like it was electric. Like I couldn't put it down. And it was people talking the way I talk. product, and it was action that I would want to see, that I was interested in. And then I remember I went back. I was like, "Who is this guy?" And it was obviously Tarantino. And then went back and watched the Reservoir Dogs. And I remember like the speech, the like a virgin speech at the beginning of that movie, and just having my mind blown. Like somebody thought of that and wrote that, and like
Yeah.
I bought the script for Reservoir Dogs at the Barnes and Noble, back when those things bookstores existed, and like read that. And so it was very much like especially those early Tarantino movies like really opened up the idea that if I wanted to go a writing route or a movie route, there was a lot that was possible. It wasn't
Yeah.
my limited like podunk Eastern Connecticut experiences of the books they made me read in high school. I mean, the joke in my family was that I didn't read a book until I was 18. Like I just had zero interest in any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so movies really kind of opened that door. And you know, I'm grateful. It's definitely worked out. Funny to think all these years later I wrote a book, but yeah, it was definitely the movies that showed me uh uh kind of what's possible with language and with art.
I think that's one of the things that made movies kind of stand out to me, because I've always wondered why I was so interested in film. And like at the time, I thought I was wanted to be an actor. And the thinking of it now, I think a lot of it goes hand in hand with that generalist thing we were talking about, because
Yeah.
and a writer would fall into this same category. And I've never really thought about it until now, but like there's few jobs, and this is what I've always told people back when I'd be like, man, I'd love to be an actor, which I didn't tell to a lot of people when I was younger, because again, I'm in West Tennessee. Like that's like bonkers to think
Yeah.
something like that. But it's the generalist thing because, man, I I have always wanted to do and be a lot of things. Like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be in the military, or then I want to be like a farmer. I want to be a doctor. I want to do all these other things. And that's where I'm kind of like, where is the one place where you can be all of these things? And really, it's kind of like the movies,
Yeah.
or writing. Like,
Yeah.
as a writer, you can pour yourself into a topic, like you said. I mean, reloading. I mean, you could write on Free Range American. The cool thing, you could write on movies. You could do something like top 5 action films of the '80s, and like bust into that world. And so it's pretty neat now to think about it in that generalist way. And it's like that's kind of explaining to me now maybe why I part of my allure to the film world is because of that. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean Tarantino. I mean, yeah, he's a beast. I mean, I still loved From Dusk Till Dawn is still one of
Yeah.
my favorites, because I like that one. I like the kind of horror genre, but I like that kind of over the top. The whole movie, and then all of a sudden, then it's like a freaking western bar full of vampires and stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, totally over the top. Um, but yeah, I
Yes.
think to your point on like you can do all of these things through that medium. Like I think I just got lucky. Like I didn't really have a master plan. I it did occur to me though many years ago that like if I stuck with it, uh, my career in trying to make content and in writing and editing and trying to do videos was going to open up avenues for me to do all the things that I wanted to do. So like I
Yeah.
didn't grow up hunting, and I started hunting, and man, that like ruined my life. That was the only thing I wanted to do was be in the woods. And then I started bow
Yeah.
hunting and like forget about it. Like just all I could think, like waking up in the morning and my eyes open and I see the ceiling and I'm thinking about like if the grains of my arrow or like speed of my bow, just obsessed. And because I had gone that writing video route, it became an opportunity to get in the woods and kind of have those experiences. And it's done it with chickens, and it's done it with now reloading, and it did it with rimfire rifles. And I guess I've really been fortunate in that I kind of naturally sort of skewed towards a world where I could I could write about all of my interests. My
Yeah.
grandparents, it's funny, like my grandparents before they died, they were always like could not understand how I had a job. They're like, but that's just like what you want to do. I was like, yeah, Pa, like that's the goal is like get an assignment on something I actually want to do. He's like, but they
Yeah.
pay you. You know, they're gonna give you a gun and pay you to write about it. Like, yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I don't get it either. It's awesome. You know,
Yeah. Oh
but
yeah.
I just
Yeah, that
lucked out, I guess.
that was kind of one of the things that whenever because I had landed an agent and was kind of pursuing that route, and I had somebody explain it to me one time because I was like, several of my family members around here, they could not grasp the film world. That's like
Yeah,
it'd be kind of like what you're saying. Like that'd be like something you would do for fun. Like you and your buddies might go out and make like some dumb movie, but it's like this is not a realistic thing to pursue. And I had somebody break it down. They're like, the difference is where it would be easier, especially in like a very blue collar town like where I'm at. It wouldn't blow people away if, let's say, I was a great baseball player and, I played in college and then the Atlanta Braves wanted to sign me. Like,
yeah,
nobody would be like, dude, nobody does this. This is unrealistic. Like, because it's sports, it's more relatable for the kind of this area. And now, I mean, if I personally had been offered by the Braves, people would have been blown away because I was
yeah,
not a good baseball player. But like, that's kind of how they were saying. They're like, it's because that film stuff kind of does fall into that art side of things, which I think it
yeah,
gets a bad rap because people do look at it as this artsy fartsy thing. And that's another thing why I think it's neat that you're interested in it. And it's something like I've talked to quite a few guys. I mean, Rudy Reyes has been on here. Rudy
yeah,
he's an insanely interesting guy, but he's a straight up savage too. So like,
yeah,
nobody like it's I think people put themselves in these boxes unnecessarily, and it's almost like they're embarrassed to share what they really are interested in doing. Like there might be a guy that'd be a great writer, but he'd be embarrassed to ever say, or try his hand at writing. And so it's fascinating to me to kind of hear your story on that. Um,
yeah.
on that, when are we ever going to see a screenplay by Michael Shea, man? When are we going to see that?
Yeah, someday maybe. I'm actually thinking about like what the next project is. I don't know if it'll be a screenplay, but I've been kind of casting around thinking about. I kind of want to write another book. I don't
Yeah.
quite. I'm not certain what that is. I got a couple ideas. But I'm trying to organize life right now to like preserve a few hours in my morning to start something. Because I love projects, you know, and like being able to have a, a creative project, a creative outlet, you know, independent of work, independent of family, independent of hunting and fishing and guns. Um, I think is important. So yeah, I don't know about a screenplay, but something's coming. Something's in the works.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm curious to see, man. I'd love to see you write a screenplay, man. That's something that's always fascinating to me. Uh, and you said something pretty early on as well that you got into this and you wanted to you have those people like you got into chicken farming. You had the
Yeah,
contact through now
yeah,
where you could call somebody. That was kind of the funny thing with me in this podcast. Like, I never really envisioned having a podcast. Like it's kind of something that just unfolded and I wanted to have these awesome contacts. That's something I've always wanted to have. Like if I wanted to talk to somebody about writing, if I wanted to talk to somebody about some movie things and other stuff, I wanted to be able to talk to those people. Never thought
yeah,
a podcast would happen, but it did, and now that's what I do. I talk to these people. And so
yeah.
like it's all cool how the path really just all ties in. I don't know. I still think about how surreal it is.
Yeah, yeah, and that's cool to hear about the podcast because, like, that was definitely my early experience of being a writer. Was I was sort of stunned that people would take my call, because
Yeah.
like I was always of the school of like, who the heck am I,
Yep.
and all of a sudden I had access to experts, and I think a lot of people are like I was hesitant to pick up that phone or start that podcast, but what I found is that a lot of these people talk to me not because they thought Mike Shea was special, but because they're good people. Like especially if you get into like the gun industry or you get into like
Yeah.
the outdoor industry. If you have questions and you want to be a writer or a better bow hunter or a podcast guy, like take a little bit of initiative and reach out to those people and ask them questions because for the most part, people like to help people. Like I really believe that. I don't think that's just kind of wanton optimism. You reached out. We talked a little bit about writing. We talked about that. And obviously, like I want to help. And I'm sure the kid who wants to start a podcast is listening to you and having the same thoughts. And so I just encourage people to like don't feel like you need some special platform to reach out to the people you respect whose work that you like. If you have solid questions, like just hit them up, man. They're not. If they say no, they're not going to take away your birthday. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just give it a give
Yeah.
it a shot and make the call.
Man, I've said several times that's like I feel like one of my strong suits for getting into podcasting and this thing is when I was dating in high school, girls would shoot me down. And it's like, hey, man, the rejection, I got used to it then. So it's just prepared me for whenever somebody says no now. It just don't
Yeah,
sting so bad. I'm used
exactly.
to it. So, like, that's what I'd say.
Yeah,
Like, if a dude is scared, it's like, man, come on, you've had a woman shoot you down. It's nothing, no worse than that. So I know we're kind of nearing that hour time. I gotta ask real quick. I want to hear this story. It's in your bio there about you tanned a deer hide. I'm sure you've shared it, but you've tanned a deer hide in an apartment bathroom, and I
yeah.
gotta know about this. What is the details on this?
Yeah, so I started hunting in my early 20s, and I started duck hunting, and then I moved to New York, like I mentioned, to go to school. And my uncle, out near where my parents live in Eastern Connecticut and Rhode Island, he was a big deer hunter, and he said, "Well, if you like duck hunting, you probably would like deer hunting." So I sat one year and didn't really get it, and then I don't even know how old I was, maybe 25, 26. And there was a muzzleloader season, and Rhode Island, where my family's most of them are from, has a great early muzzleloader season. And so I went in, I bought a muzzleloader, and he helped me sight it in. And he showed me this spot on state land that it was kind of his spot. We set up a tree stand, and then I went, and then there was a blizzard that night, like literally like a New England blizzard, like feet of snow. And I was in
Yeah,
my little banger Tacoma, which I still got. I'm never going to get rid of this little truck. And I drove it out there through the storm, and like hiked in the snow and got in there and was in this stand, just like, this is outrageous. Like nothing is moving in this. And I didn't even know enough to know that, but I could sense it. But clearly nothing was moving.
yeah,
And then about noon, this the sun opened up and the storm went away and it started warming up and the trees were dripping. And I had put out scent wicks. I was, anything I could do back then, I would do. And this little like four
yeah.
corn buck walked through, and man, I shot him at like 10 yards. And I called my uncle, and I wish I had audio of that phone call when I killed my first deer. Um, I was just screaming into the phone, like, I did it, I got
Yeah.
one, and like top of my lungs, screaming in the woods like a crazy person. And my uncle came and was on the backside of this pond, and so we got a canoe and we got it out, and then butchered the deer, saved the hide, and then so I had this deer hide and I did a Euro like in my parents' kitchen. I didn't like know enough to get like a turkey fryer. My parents walked in and the whole house stunk like a deer head.
Oh
It's
man,
pretty
yeah,
it's pretty
boiled the
funny.
head in there.
Yeah, boiled the head right in my parents' kitchen.
Oh,
I just didn't
that
know any.
smell
I
is so
was
bad too.
It's so bad. The house stunk for like a week. But I just like was so enthusiastic and just didn't know any better. And
Yeah.
had this deer hide in a freezer, and I was in the Cabela's and walking through, and I saw like a bottle of that instant tan, and I was like, well, heck, I'm gonna try that. And anything hunting related, I just charged at it back then, and bought the bottle and went back to my city apartment. I was in graduate school at the time, and had this frozen deer hide in a trash bag and brought it into New York City and Manhattan, and just let it thaw out, and then went through that whole process, like dried it on a laundry rack in the bathtub, fleshed it on the bathtub, like I used the bathtub like a fleshing pole, and fleshed it out.
All right.
And
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was pretty gnarly. And then it needed to dry, and so I hung it on the fire escape out the window. And I walked out. I gotta find it. If I can find it, I'll text it to you. I walked out and I took a picture of the fire escape, and like on the top floor of this 4-story building is my deer hide hanging. And it like reminded me of that scene in Fight Club, at the end of Fight Club where he talks about the end of civilization and they're tanning deer hides on abandoned
Yeah.
highways. And I was just like so much pride. I was like, I'm like doing this all myself. This is so awesome. And
Yeah.
and it's funny the way the world works. So I was editing video at Field and Stream, and one of the guys, actually now the editor, uh, the editor in charge of the entire magazine, Colin, walked in, and he was like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And I showed him that picture, and I was like, "I just tanned a deer hide in my bathroom," and he was like, That's a story." And so that was actually my first story for Field and Stream.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, and so wrote that for them. That was my first byline. And then when they years later when they redid the website, I got to give Colin the credit. He wrote my bio and included that in there, and it's just so good. It's followed me, that bio line, everywhere I go.
Well, that's what I
But
mean. It intrigued me, so I had to know the story. When I saw that, I was like, this is definitely something I got to know. And I'm imagining, because New York, I've only been once for my honeymoon. Me and my wife actually went to New York City and stayed in Times Square. Really just because I wanted to see what it was like. Because again, I'm small town Tennessee dude. That was like a whole different world for me.
yeah,
And I did not see any deer hides hanging on fire escapes when I was there. I
yeah.
will say there was something missing, and now I know what it is. It was deer hides on fire escapes.
Yeah. I had a very unique New York experience because I lived in Upper Manhattan, and it was not a good neighborhood. Like the SWAT team was in my building regularly. And there
Oh
are all these
gosh,
kind of like, I don't want to say like gang guys, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if they were tough guys, right? Like very
yeah,
urban New
yeah,
York. Nobody looked like me, like nobody hunted and fished, but I lived in the building and I was just friendly with everyone. And I got to know one guy, and I had just killed a bear in Canada with my bow. It was the first big thing I killed with a bow. And I got video of it. And so I'm walking in my building and I see this guy. He's like, "Hey, Mike, what's up, man?" I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" I was like, "Hey, check this out. Like, look at what I did this weekend." And I showed him the video on my phone of me killing this bear and then showed that. And so, like, I instantly became like a legend in the block, because that
yeah.
story got out.
You're the bear
People would
killer.
stop me and be like, "Hey, can I see the bear?" And I'd show them on my phone. So I had a very unique New York City experience, but it was awesome because like everybody there, no access to the outdoors at all. They were looking at like what I was doing in these little moments, and they just thought it was awesome. You know, I started showing them pictures of like
Yeah,
I was in Florida shooting machine guns, and then like, "Hey, check out this AK," and showing it to them, and they loved it, man. And just it was a cool time in my life, but it was very It was very unique, I guess, best word
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
New York was a fascinating place to me, and uh, Times Square, we went in January, so it was cold, but I wore a ball cap because this is typically what I kind of had to wear, and I swear like I saw nobody wearing a ball cap. Like I knew when we landed in New York and got to our hotel, like I was the only dude I saw in a ball cap, and I'll never forget. Like somebody had told me that they weren't very friendly in New York, which is the opposite. They were very friendly whenever I was
Yeah.
there. But now I'm bad. Like when we would walk down the streets, if somebody would, the little street vendors or something, if they would talk to me, I would talk to them because I will talk to anybody. Like my wife would be like, "You got to stop talking to everybody. Like they're trying to get you to buy stuff." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not just gonna walk past this person, like." Because I'd walk by and the dude would be like, "Hey man," and I'd be like, "Hey man, how's it going?" Like, and
Yeah.
so there was this guy. I'll never forget. He was selling CDs or something, and he was this big black guy, and I don't know if he was what his band or whatever was called his name, but he was like handing out these CDs, and we were walking past, and he goes, "Hey man, you need a CD here?" And I just said, "No man, I appreciate it." And I guess he picked up in that little bit my southern accent because he kind of stepped back and he said, "Man, you sound like you know how to work a scope." And he said, "And I ain't talking about a microscope." And that like has tripped me out
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
since.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was funny, man. It was a unique place, but I enjoyed it for the history. It was a lot of history in New York, and I thought that was really cool. But um, I definitely want to see this hide on the fire escape. I got to see that for sure.
I'll dig
Um,
that out. Yeah, I have a lot of like country friends, I guess, so to speak, who if I have some of them I've seen it happen where I've gone into the city with them for like we did a Ducks Unlimited banquet a while back, and they like visibly can't handle it. Like the amount of people in
yeah,
the buildings, like it's too much, and their reaction is like, oh, screw the city. I'm a country person. And likewise,
yeah,
I know city people who are friends I made when I lived there. And until they really knew me, they would look at the country and they'd look at guns or they'd look at ARs and be like, why would you need that? And then if they were around doing the same thing, they'd have like that anxiety sort of reaction,
yeah,
like couldn't handle it, I never need a gun in my life, or I never need to go back to the city. And my outlook has always been like, I want to be like comfortable and in control and knowledgeable about my surroundings wherever I am, whether that's like on the
yeah,
subway or whether it's like at a machine gun shoot. And
yeah,
so I'm excited. I guess that's a long-winded way of saying like I'm happy to hear that that was kind of your experience because that tells me like that's somebody who can kind of walk anywhere and be okay and be comfortable. I've often said like with my son
yeah,
and my daughter, you know, at 10 years old, like I want them to be able to like ride the subway by themselves and be able to gut a deer, and like that to me would be a
yeah,
parenting success because it shows like a total development, and like I definitely like
yeah,
live on the countryside of this country kind of urban divide, but I jump over it back and forth all the time. And I don't know. I just appreciate it. So it's cool to hear your story though, because it shows like you definitely have that level of comfort that a lot of people from probably West Tennessee, uh, I would reckon don't. At least a lot of the people from upstate New York here, where I
yeah,
live now, don't. I know a pile of people who'd never been
yeah.
to the city, who live 4 hours
It
from it.
Yeah, it does it's like I think one of the things that it pushes me out of like my element is very much the like I said the kind of country element. Like I know this is my element here. Like I mean I went to Vegas in December by myself and was like very out of my element. But like I think a lot of times I just will put myself in scenarios where it's like, all right, I'm here, so I'm doing the thing. And that's kind of which New York was something I was just I'd always been fascinated by because it was so foreign to what I knew. Like, it was so different. So like, I really wanted to see that.
Yeah.
But no, I get that on the kids. Like that's how I have twin 4-year-old boy girl, and
Awesome.
that's how I want them to be as diversified in that element as they can be. Like I want them to have that southern, uh, I don't know, whatever, like how I was brought up, but also to have that adventurous, not be afraid to go see like the city or something. But so I don't know, man. I think that's something I'm guess I'm lock step with you on that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Um, Tell everybody. First, you kind of you talked about your book a little bit. What's your book called that everybody can go check out?
Yeah, man. It's called Rimfire Revolution. So, talking about these kind of rabbit holes I go down, I got real hooked on precision rimfire rifles, and there wasn't really anything about it. So, it's kind of like an update on the 22. If you go back in time, like in the 30s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there was always like a gun book that would come out on the 22s and on
Yeah,
rimfire, and I just felt like it needed an update. So it's called Roomfire Revolution. You can get it anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Gun Digest. And then I'm in uh, Free Range American is where you can find most of my work right now. So freerangeamerican.us. And yeah, pretty easy to find at Michael R. Shea. And shoot me a message, an email if you're interested in the book or writing or whatever. Like I try to make myself very available. You know, there were a lot of guys who were in editing, content, writing positions who made themselves available to me. So I feel like the least I can do is people who want to get after it. Like I love to help.
yeah, for sure. Well, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Uh, Everybody, I hope y'all have enjoyed hearing Michael's story. I feel like we could go down a lot of different rabbit holes. So I have to have you back on, man. It's been really fun talking to you.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Everybody, y'all go check out what Michael's doing. And I hope y'all have enjoyed this episode. I do ask that if you liked it, please leave us a rating and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up and share it and subscribe. Thank y'all.